Welcome to Node.js Foundation Core Technical Committee meeting for November 16th, 2016. As ever, we'll start with the stand-up. Anna, take it away.
Yeah, not much. I've been catching up a bit on things. I landed 2 or 3 of my PRs that have been lying around for a while. That's it. Next up is Bradley, who is not here. So, Ben?
Hey, nothing special to report really. Just as usual. A lot of first-line hotline support. I don't know who's next. I don't have the list in front of me.
I think I'm the next person who's here. I was reviewing issues and pull requests, and I just did the libuv 1.10.1 release, and opened a PR into Node for that. Next is Evan.
Actually, I think we skipped Nikita.
Oh, nothing significant, just some security investigation in the ecosystem. Nothing else to report. I don't know who's next, but probably that is Evan.
Yeah, for me, just a small PR and some comments on PRs and issues, not much. Next is Jeremiah.
Hey, I did some code coverage for process nextix and process warnings. Also some miscellaneous PR and issue stuff. And then, as of like, I don't know, very recently, say like 20 minutes ago, we put the bot script to attempt pull request backports into production. So this should automatically add certain labels. You can see that in Node.js/GitHub-bot/pull/90. I'll put that in the chat too. So what that's going to do is, if you have a pull request, if it cannot land on v7, it'll add the don't land on. So if it can't land on the current, if it can't land on the current branch, it'll add a don't land on label. And then conversely, or sort of opposite for LTS branches, it will only do LTS watch labels if it can land cleanly. The next is Tracy. Whom I don't think is actually here. I should have looked at that. So that would be Fedor. Is Fedor here? Fedor is not here. So James is also not here. Michael, no. Josh Grant.
Yeah, just going over some libraries and tools and stuff that work with Inspector, and helping out a bit at the version management group that we're trying to get going. Next is Michael Dawson.
So we did some support on resizing our AX machines so they have the resources we'd originally intended. There were some contributions to help make the code coverage job, the output report look better, so just validated those and pushed them through. General keeping up with issues and commenting. I fixed up our config in Jenkins so we can now get emails on job failure. Set up the next benchmarking meeting and started an issue just to see about pruning the membership like we've been doing with the build group, work group. Ongoing work on the ABI stable POC, attended the LTS and diagnostics meetings, and just miscellaneous reviews and lands, which maybe I already covered. But on to Brian White.
Brian White is not here, but he did put in that he reviewed PRs and replied to issues. I also see that James showed up while we were doing this. So James, are you prepared to do a stand-up, or should we keep going?
Yeah, it's really quick for me. I was in Japan for NodeFest for a few days, and I've been working on the HTTP2 implementation. So that's it for me.
I think I'm
Is Ali here? Yes.
Yeah. So nothing major to report from my side. Next would be Jen. Or Rod, which I don't think is here. Seth isn't here either. Shigeki and Team Loomis aren't here. So next would be Michael. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Dargosh?
Yeah. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you can say Michael. It's fine. So, hello everyone. I've been reviewing some pull requests and working on making V8 5.5 ABI compatible with our current version 5.4. And that's it.
Next
So
on the list is Miles.
Hello. So, let me see what I wrote down. So I've been working on backporting stuff to V4 and V6. Mentoring a new potential backporter, Gibson, another IBMer, just kind of like hung out with me while I was doing a backporting session and started an invite to other people. If anyone else on this call is interested in screen sharing with me while I do a backporting session, please just let me know. More than happy to have you involved. I mentored and onboarded a new canary in the goldmine collaborator, George Adams, another IBM employee. He's landed a whole bunch of great commits on there. General review of issues and PRs, and also participated in the initial version management meeting, which happened yesterday. Next up would be Trevor. Is Trevor around?
Yes. Nothing really to note. Ben, I just responded to 9467. Also, I found a couple of performance regressions. I haven't looked deep into it, but when I was rebasing some code from 6 on a master, I found that use of const slowed things down and looked like the class constructor, not just normal constructors, also got a hair bit slower. So I'll look into that sometime, but I was able to work around it. One of them was just to go back to using var instead of const, and that solved the issue. Next is Rich.
Hello. So we're going to talk about this, but only briefly. The CTC meeting schedule. I had a proposal to add a third meeting time. Ben had a counter proposal, and that got me deciding that I should finally stop trying to manually process this spreadsheet and figure things out, and instead write some code to come up with options based on criteria. So I'll probably try to finish that up this week or something, and then hopefully this will all be a lot less painful. But we'll see. And then just the usual test fixes, watching Jenkins, and pestering the right or wrong people when stuff doesn't work, and PR and issue comments. I believe that is the end of the stand-up. Is there anybody who did not provide a stand-up? Great. Let's move on to the agenda. The public portion of this meeting is probably going to be pretty fast. We just covered the first thing, the CTC meeting schedule proposal. I'd like to propose that we just, for now, stick with the 2 times we've been rotating through until we get, and maybe I'll back channel with Ben a bit to kind of come up with something that will distribute the pain a little more to North America to make it less painful on other time zones. Does anybody want to talk about this, or is it okay to move on to the next topic?
Which like schedule are we following right now? Like,
Right. So if you go,
I'm not really clear on like what next meeting's time is going
if you
to
go,
be,
if you go
or the
to,
meeting after that.
Okay, if you go to the CTC repo, the README has a table for all of the currently scheduled meetings for November and December.
Oh, is it
and
merged? Okay.
Yeah, and it just currently it just rotates through 2 times. The 2 times we've been bouncing back and forth with. I don't think there's anything else in there. Yeah. We haven't yet added a 3rd time. That's what this is kind of about. And maybe there's something to be said for taking a breather and letting it bounce between 2 times for a month before trying to mix it up a little bit. But yeah, the schedule's there. Anything else?
I was gonna say maybe it'd be useful to send like calendar invites to everybody, because I know like keeping up with the time is difficult for me, and it's during the day, so I'm sure it's more difficult for people who it's normally during the night.
Yeah, Trevor expressed a similar concern. Go ahead, Devin.
William Kapke actually has a calendar that he maintains for the foundation. Maybe we can get him to drop these on there, and then everyone can just subscribe to that calendar.
I think he actually already has these on those calendar. Go ahead, Evan.
Oh yeah, I mean that was it. I didn't realize there already was one.
And if that doesn't work for people, if we can come up with one calendar option that'll work, like if I send a Google Calendar invite to people, I'm happy to set those up. I mean, there's already so much tedious involved in setting up a meeting that just one more thing isn't going to even register. All right. Well, this will be on the agenda in coming weeks. Let's move ahead. Speaking of William Kapke, he just wanted sort of a public service announcement about issue 32 in the CTC repo, which is about reviving the documentation working group. So if anyone listening, or if anyone on the call today, or anyone reading the minutes, thinks they can provide a valuable contribution to documentation and is motivated, maybe head over there and drop a note in, and we'll see what we can do. Does anybody else want to add anything on this topic?
It wasn't like part of this blocked by the fact that we never got like guides to build from the core repo. I don't even know who was working on that, but anyways, just a reminder on that.
I think that part of the trouble was that the docs working group was wanting to move the documentation out of core repo.
Oh, true, yeah.
And I think that there was like we couldn't gain consensus on that. So I think that was part of the stall.
Yeah, I have to imagine that it's even though the docs working group didn't get that to happen, that there was understandable arguments the other way. I have to imagine that it's still possible to have a functional working group that cares about the docs and is actively working on stuff.
Yeah, I think that's true. It shouldn't be a showstopper.
Okay, I'm going to move along to the next topic unless someone tells me to stop, which is the reverting of the buffer deprecation warning, and I believe that we are going to move that to the private segment. So unless, again, someone tells me to stop, I'm going to move along. The TLS fixed the leak of write wrap plus TLS wrap. This is issue 9626, and I have to remind myself who put this on the agenda.
Yeah, that was Fedor, but he's not here. But it's about a memory leak in the TLS module, and I believe Fedor wants to expedite backporting it to the V6 and V4 branches.
I think that we've resolved it actually in the issue. I proposed that we get this into a V7 release ASAP and cut an RC with the commit next week on V4 and V6, which was the current plan anyways, which would allow us to still keep a December 6th release date for the official releases, and also gives it 2 weeks to bake, so we're not releasing something that hasn't gone out in a current release. Fedora said it would be okay, and one of his colleagues said an RC works for them as far as something that they can move forward with. So I think that we are good moving forward with the current plan, which does not change our release plans at all for LTS.
Right, and whoever objected to basically, pulling a patch forward, they're I forget who that was. They're okay now. Because I thought somebody had just had an objection to the fact that we'd be putting out a patch that OpenSSL hadn't actually put out in one of their releases.
That's the separate issue.
Oh, okay.
Great, and it looks like Miles was the one who suggested that we might want to talk about that today. So if Miles is happy, that's good enough for me, unless somebody else has something to add on that topic.
Hey, Miles, were you going to cut the V7 release, or?
I was not planning to cut the V7 release. I was assuming that there was a V7 release coming down the pipeline because of the libuv stuff. So I staged that change in V7X staging, and I was just going to make sure to communicate with whoever was coordinating that release.
Okay. Jeremiah, do you want to take this one, or do you want me to take it, or?
For what, next week?
I mean, what kind of time frame do you think that we need on this, Miles?
I was under the impression that the rush was more around getting it out in the LTS releases, but I would prefer if we could get a V7 release out next Tuesday, because if we have the RCs go out at that time, that gives us exactly 2 weeks for it to bake before we promote both of those LTS releases.
Okay. Yeah, I can probably do a current release then. Aim for Monday, Tuesday.
Okay. If if you can't, then speak up and somebody will help.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, I love happy resolutions. The last one is the issue 9467 that Trevor alluded to earlier. Don't call into VM from async wrap. And I guess this is Andreas Madsen put this on the agenda, wanting to presumably have there be a plan of action, whether it's land this and then land something else later, or don't land this or what. So I guess if Trevor or Ben wants to provide the current status of where the conversation is, and if we, what we need to discuss, or if we are even qualified to discuss it here and now.
Depends on how many people here are interested in async wrap. So the issue is that due to the way the V8 garbage collector works, it's no longer allowed to call into the VM during a garbage collection cycle. And we currently do that when, I hope I get this right. So when you're using async wrap, you can install hooks. And one of those hooks is the destroy hook. And that runs when weakly reachable persistent objects are garbage collected. That was never safe, but it kind of escaped notice. And it's currently causing crashes. We've received 3 separate bug reports so far. So my stopgap measure is to simply remove the destroy hook for now. And if someone wants to step up and come up with a better fix, and I believe Trevor and I more or less agree on what the proper fix is, then if someone wants to work on that, they're most welcome. But as a like I said, as a stopgap measure, I'd like to remove it for now.
So
Yeah, and
Let Trevor talk.
No, you go ahead, Rich, or whoever's talking.
I was just going to ask a quick question, which was is removing it going to break stuff versus if we just make it do nothing? I know that's not going to be good for people either.
Removing it will break stuff, yes.
Right.
There's not much code that relies on current async wrap, but it does exist.
Hey, the fact that bug reports were filed means it is being used, which makes me happy. So no, there are a couple resolutions for this, and Ben. So one, I've gone over this code 100 times while working on that final PR, and I've seen that all the handles and requests that we make weak don't have to be, because once they're done, they're done. I feel like we did it in the past so that if the handle was accessed after it was used, it wouldn't crash because it would try and do lookups on a class that didn't exist. But those safeguards have been put in now, where if the class isn't there, it just simply returns I don't know anything. So we could just remove all weakness and manually delete them when we're done with them. Another option, and I need your expertise on this, but I think it's safe to call into the VM from the set second pass callback call. So like on first GC pass, we basically call the destroy callback through the second pass callback. I think that'd be safe.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I don't know, perhaps Ali can comment. I was under the impression that the VA team wants to phase that out. I don't know why I think that. Ali?
Yeah, I had the same deja vu feeling. I think at some point they were actively trying to phase it back, but I'm not sure if it's happened or if it's still the plan. I think it's there for now, but it would be good to make sure that it's actually intended to be there going forward.
Okay, that would be code-wise. That'd be simplest to implement, because we could also put it into buffer, because right now users are allowed to know when a buffer object is cleaned up, and as somebody made mention about an hour ago in the issue, modules like Node weak are now unstable because they rely on that same timing. So if you call a JavaScript function during the time that Node buffer alerts you to that, then it can fail as well. So it might be worth also tweaking the Node buffer API to not call until the second pass callback to make that safe. And then the last option is just to throw everything into a UV idle T and basically call all the callbacks on set immediate, because I didn't realize this fully until late last week, that even when you close a handle, it's still not called immediately. The destructor isn't called because the class isn't deleted until the UV close callback is called. And I have no freaking idea. I don't know what's going on with VM and GC when that phase of the event loop is running. Ben, maybe you can weigh in on that.
Don't know. I don't know. Yeah, don't know exactly what your question is.
Okay, so in some cases, when you close a handle, it will excuse me, it will call the destructor immediately, which will call the JavaScript function immediately. That's safe. But in other cases, it puts the handle through UV close, and then the destructor is called after the UV close callback is called. And those callbacks aren't called until the last phase of UV run, and I can't remember what that specific thing is called, But at that point, we've completely exited out of all JavaScript stacks, and I'm not quite sure like what else might be going on at that time. Does that make sense?
Oh, right. Yeah, I think I understand what you mean. Yeah, so it's from the UV close callback. So at that point, there are only C stack frames underneath. The VM is in a consistent state. It's not busy garbage collecting, so it's safe to call into the VM.
Okay, so
it's only now, only with weekly persistent handles when those are collected. That's the pain point right now.
okay, great. Then okay, so those are the three options. Remove all weak handles completely. I use second pass callback if it's still available, and throw everything into a UV idle T that needs to be thrown into a UV idle T.
So to clarify, for the UV idle T option, it would only be destroy callbacks that would be thrown into it, not before,
Yes.
after, and in it.
No, just destroy, and that's just to get around GC. So only destroy. And this should be documented. Destroy is not always called the exact moment that like the user closes the handle, right? Because we wait until UV has properly cleaned up the resources in the UV close callback. So we've never guaranteed the timing on UV close. We've only treated the destroy callback as any resources you have tied to this ID, it's time to clean them up.
Okay. So this poses, I think, a little bit of an interesting problem that we haven't run into yet with our current processes. So async wrap is currently an experimental API, which means it could be changed or removed at any time by technicality, as far as my understanding goes. So we could remove that for now to make it not crash. The question is if that is a good idea. I would probably lean towards, if we really need to go that route, to just making them no ops instead. Or
that would be more
maybe
dangerous.
They would be in that case anyway, because we're not trying to call it. I'm not sure.
No, that would be more dangerous because if users hook into it, they will be expecting it and probably using it to clean up like IDs attached to a map that have resources. And if it's never called, then their process is just going to bloat and die.
Yeah, I mean, their process is kind of just going to die anyways, though, because it's going to throw.
But not in all cases. Like this, not every process that uses this will die. I have been using it a ton in its development, and I have never run into this scenario. I don't.
I mean, if we remove the destroy hook.
Yeah.
I guess removing the destroy hook would be essentially no opping it, because it's whether if you call a user function or not.
The reason a real solution interests me is because this is. I have my code up right now. This is exactly what I'm coding to. I have all the old stuff in. Ben, you brought this up, and so this was one of the almost the very last thing to throw it up and say, okay, the final PR is done. But if we need to rush this in to fix these issues because the final PR is bigger and will require more review, I would prefer that. If it would feel silly to remove it, just add it back in, and I'm fine one-offing it and just getting it immediately. I know how to implement any of these, but I'm curious from everyone what they feel is the most appropriate solution.
Well, if one of the options is to remove all weak handles, to me that seemed like the best option, if only for the performance gains. I mean, weak handles have more overhead than strong persistent handles.
Okay. All right, I can do that.
So this, I think, was put on the agenda because there was concern that there was going to be a sort of a stalemate where 9467 wasn't going to land and something else wasn't going to land for a long time or something like that. It sounds like, at least between Trevor and Ben, there's some agreement on what the approach will be over the next week or something. Is that accurate?
Yeah, hope.
Yeah, I think we're already pretty much in agreement. It's more a matter of time frame, I think. So my main problem is that people are reporting the reporting crashes, which I would like to see fixed. So we have this stopgap measure that's basically just removing the destroy hook. So there may be a better fix, but if it's not going to materialize in the next, say, 1 or 2 weeks, then I would still push for removing the destroy hook for now.
Okay, so is the when's the next release? With approximately
Tuesday, probably.
Next week?
7.x Tuesday.
All right. So then what I can do is I can put 1 or 2 days of work into removing all the weak handles, and that will give me a good estimate on how long it will take to complete. If it's more time than I can get done before the next release, then I'll just implement the using the UV idle T. That's a very straightforward fix. And I can definitely get that done before the next release. So either way, we can have a fix to prevent crashes before next release.
Okay. Just as a question, like, is the crash only when people use async wrap?
Yeah, but the thing is, so all 3 bug reports we've received so far were from people that were not aware that they actually were using async wrap, because it was a dependency of a dependency that that used a destroy hook.
Right. I mean, that's a little bit tricky, but I think, like, okay, if it's crashing on an experimental API, that's like a little bit less serious.
You know, it's not just that. Somebody commented in 9467 just before the meeting began that they had been experiencing crashes in Node weak module because of this exact same issue. Whereas before, it might have not been officially safe, but it was safe enough to call in the JavaScript from that point.
I think Jeremiah is referring to async hooks as the experimental API.
Yes, I know. I'm referring to whether it's crashing, if that's the only place it's crashing. And I'm saying, no, there are modules in the ecosystem where it's also crashing. In terms of core, it's the only JavaScript exposed API, but also the buffer API where we allow the callback. That is also a place where it can crash. We don't guarantee safety of calling into JavaScript from that callback.
So because we have a plan of action, I'd like to unless there's more that needs to be talked about right now, I'd like to propose that we move on just to make sure we have enough time for the buffer issue in the private segment. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Okay. I will note that someone made a comment about maybe if we don't want to get bug reports about experimental APIs crashing, maybe in production systems, maybe we can not turn on experimental things by default. I don't know how feasible that actually is, but I wanted to. But anyway,
can I speak to that really quickly, Rich?
Really quickly, go ahead.
To whoever wrote that, I think it's important to keep those experimental features, even though we don't support them. They've been a way of finding lots of bugs that fix it so that when the new releases come out, we don't find those bugs then.
Like this.
So this is the system working.
Kind of, yeah. The thing is like we don't really get that many like bug reports or stuff, it seems, from RCs. So if you want to do it in like a manner that's only built by some releases, I feel like we're still not at a point where people use those that much.
Yeah. Okay. That can be a large conversation because there's lots of point counterpoint. So I probably should have not brought it up. But it is time. Oh, you know what we didn't do? We didn't go over the previous meeting, but we're just let's just move along to QA on public channels, I believe is what we're up to now. So any questions or comments on the YouTubes or anywhere else, Jeremiah?
William said that he updated the calendar. So I guess like the new meetings are on William Kapke's calendar. What we talked about earlier. So yeah, if you have any questions, put them in the YouTube chat or in IRC. We'll be watching for a couple minutes. In the meantime, the next CTC meeting is actually Rich. You might know better when it is. What time it is?
Yeah, 4 hours earlier than this one started. This next CTC meeting will be in 1 week from today, but starting at 1600 UTC.
And then the next TSC meeting is apparently tomorrow, at this same time as this meeting.
Yeah, is it 12 p.m.? So it's moved up an hour. Just want to note that.
12 p.m. Pacific, yes. Diagnostics meeting, apparently there's one scheduled for sometime in December. If you look at the Node.js/diagnostics repo, probably more information there. Benchmarking, there's a meeting, I think that's this Friday, November the 18th, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And I think that's it for scheduled upcoming meetings. Don't have that many viewers, no questions. I think we can probably wait just a minute and then head into the private section.
It's like college radio, dead air.
All right, well, I think we kind of have a bunch of stuff to discuss in the private section, so let's move into that.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Yes, thank you, everybody.